In 2006, there's a beautiful movie that came out called Of Gods and Men. And it's the story of the martyrs of the Trappist monastery of Treblinka in Algeria, who were killed for their faith in 1996. The monastery had been founded in the 1930s, and it was founded with a particular purpose and a mission, and that was to be with the Muslim people of the community in the village and to become one with them, helping them agriculturally, helping them particularly with medical care, but more importantly, becoming one with them as a sign of the unity of all the children of God, of whatever faith we are. And for 6 decades, that monastery had carried out this mission in very difficult and challenging times and in easy times. But in 1995, the situation got much worse. Muslim terrorists were terrorizing the local Muslim village, killing the leaders so that they would not have any opposition. And there was a genuine threat that they would kill the monks too. The government came to the monastery and told them, "We think you should leave. You serve no purpose by being here, and you're putting yourself in great danger. We think you should go back to France." And for a period of 5 months, the monks wrestled with this terrible question. Should they leave or should they stay? All of them were terrified. All of them knew there was a good likelihood they would be killed. But they were divided over whether or not to leave or to stay. And each one found a way of covering up their fear with a reason why they should leave or stay. Father Bart, who had a large family in France, who was writing to him all during this period, said that he felt he had an obligation to go home because his family would so deeply miss him if he were killed. Father Christoph, who was a leader in the community and had formed great ties with the Muslim community there in the village, wanted to leave, but he felt that if he did, he would look bad, especially with those families he had become very close to. Father Martin, who was the medical doctor, was running out of medical supplies. In fact, the terrorists took them at a certain point. And so he covered his fear by saying, "Our mission has ended here. My mission has ended here. I can't be the doctor to the village anymore because I don't have any medicines." And Brother Christian, who was the head of the community, was the abbot, covered his fear by denying that there really was any danger, because he felt he had to keep the community together and didn't know any way to do that except by denying what the reality was and by telling everyone, "We'll be safe and it will be all right." And then terrorists break into the monastery one night and there's a confrontation. But Brother Christian, the head of the abbot, speaks with the leader of the band and convinces him to leave and to leave them in peace. But after that night, the monks all knew that they would not be safe, and ultimately there would come terrorists in the night who would likely kill them. And so they gathered for a meal together and celebrated Mass, and then spoke openly and honestly about what they must do. And it's then that all of the pretenses were set aside, all of the facades that they had erected as to why they should go or why they should stay. And they spoke to one another about their fears and about their love for the people of the village, and how they would face these two counterbalancing realities in making the decision to go or to stay. As the conversation went on, they all came to one consensus, that they should stay, But the whole mission of the monastery from its beginning had been to become one with the people of the village, and they could not abandon them in their hour of need. The monks were thinking not of themselves, but of those whom they had pledged to live and serve with. And sure enough, about a month later, the terrorists came into the monastery and killed most of the monks. They became martyrs for their faith. Today's readings speak to us about humility. And many people have the wrong notion of what Christian humility is. Humility is not putting ourselves down. It's not underestimating ourselves. It's not presenting ourselves as less than we are. Humility is two things, Christian humility. It is putting aside the pretenses and facades that we often erect to try to look better to others than we are. And secondly, challenging and facing the impulse all of us have to place our own interests ahead of those of others. When the monks were wrestling with the question, they were supposedly talking about relatives in France and whether the medical community could still keep going and whether they should leave because it would look bad if they did, or whether they should be in denial of the reality of the fear. But it was when they put those pretenses aside and recognized that at heart they were facing all the same feelings, that of fear and that of love for the community that they had embraced with the whole of their lives. That was when they were able to speak with each other and pray with each other and come to consensus. It was in putting aside those pretenses. So it is in our lives. People can get caught up, we can all so easily get caught up in pretenses and facades that hide what's really going on with us, and they become prisons. Prisons which imprison us, and prisons which shut out other people from understanding our lives. Humility calls us to put aside those facades and to be open and honest with people. Not to build facades, not to pretend that we are better than we are. Secondly, humility calls us to try to challenge that very dominant human impulse to place our own self-interest first. It's a very hard thing to do in practice because it's so deep in the human heart and soul and spirit. But the gospel challenges us to do precisely this. We will never be entirely successful. But the gospel calls us to struggle with this and to understand that we are called here in this world to take account of the rights, the lives, and the love of others as much as we do ourselves. That is Christian humility. That is the humility that Christ calls us to in the gospel today. And that is the humility which we should ask God for today and every day.